How do you deal with workplace anxiety? Thoughts that often spiral in my head. Will my work be perfect? Especially with cross-team dependencies and third-party tooling, it becomes tougher for me to provide guarantees. Am I spending too much time on this project? Am I doing enough? Will my colleagues support me? Will my colleagues see me as competition or fear receiving blame and be cutthroat about it? Will I pass the next round of layoffs? Does my manager even think I'm smart, capable, have potential? Will I ever grow, progress in my career? Will my manager and colleagues remember all of my accomplishments or only fixate on any bugs or negative feedback? How do you deal with these anxious and worrisome thoughts? So, if you're like this person, as I'm sure many of us are, including myself at many times throughout my career, we have all faced crazy doubts and a lot of anxiety. There's all this noise in our head that gets in the way and prevents us from doing our best work. So today, there's four main things I want to talk about that can help you sort of get out of this rut and overcome anxiety. And in a similar fashion, I'm going to pull up some of my notes here because there's a lot of goodies that I want to talk about. I make sure I don't miss anything. And let's just get right into it. So the first one's, I think, a little bit obvious, right? And this is step one. So, right, I want you to think about all these things sort of building on each other and you just getting better as time and time goes on. So focusing on yourself, right? So point one here is stop overanalyzing other people's perceptions of you. Frankly, people don't care. There's this term that I reminded myself of again recently, and it's called sonder. Now, sonder is sort of this realization that everyone around you is leading just as complex of a life as you are, and they're also the main character in their own life. So frankly, they don't really care about what you're doing. So instead of going into work thinking, am I doing enough? Do people care if I'm doing X, Y, Z or A, B, C? Are people criticizing me? I would sort of try to get away from that mindset and just think more of, let me just focus and stay on my lane, right? We as humans tend to focus so much on ourselves because of something called the spotlight effect, where we think that everyone is paying attention to us, and maybe that's what we like, but in reality, people are simply not just devoting that much time and energy thinking about what it is that you are doing on the day to day, while at work or even outside of work. So just going with that mindset, and I think that's already going to start allowing you to sort of narrow your scope and really focus on what matters, okay? Comparison is the thief of joy. Imagine you're sitting at your desk, you're trying to do as much work as you can, and there's someone else that's way better than you doing what it is they're doing, and you're comparing yourself to them. Well, you have no idea the route they took to get there, right? You don't know the sort of challenges they had to overcome. You don't know the trials and tribulations they had to go through. Maybe it was also really hard for them. Maybe they were in a similar place as you were just a couple of years ago, and now they are where they are. So it really doesn't make sense to compare yourself, you know? For example, for people out there in the bodybuilding world, it's like if I compare myself to Chris Bumstead. I mean, there's absolutely no way that I can do that. Definitely not. And I would never do that because it's just not a fair comparison. So think the same way when you're walking into work the next time you do. And again, like what I said, people are so caught up in their own work that they're not going to be paying attention to you. So I think with all this said, you're already thinking like, well, if no one cares, let me just do what I have to do anyway, and I'll be fine. I mean, think about on your own, right? How often do you think of others doing what they're doing? Probably not a lot. Okay. Also, detach from external validation. Your worth is not tied to the opinions of your coworkers. You are not going to be better just because someone else thinks you're better, and you're not going to be worse because someone else thinks you're worse, right? And your life doesn't depend on the opinions of your coworkers. Really, at the end of the day, and as cheesy as it sounds, it really just matters how you feel about yourself. So focus on building up that self-confidence and getting through these different steps that I'm going to explain so you can get out of this rut and finally really secure yourself, narrow that scope, narrow that focus, and really sort of stay in the lane that you know you have to do. Most of the time, we go into work with an assignment already assigned to us anyway, so just focus on that one thing because you know if you do that one thing well, there's really nothing that can go wrong from doing that, okay? Finally, well, not finally, but staying present is something else I want to talk about. You know, don't worry so much about the future. Don't worry about what's going to happen tomorrow or in an hour from now or next week, in a month, a year. Just pay attention to the present, right? Ask yourself, what is it that I need to do in the next 10 minutes? There's actually a very good way of working called Pomodoro technique, where you essentially take 25 minutes of work followed by 5 minutes of rest. If you haven't heard of it, I've tried it myself. I think it's a phenomenal way to work. You can even find browser extensions if most of the work you do is the computer, which, as I'm sure most of us are doing that nowadays, that can time these different sessions for you. So 25 minutes of focused work, 5 minutes of break time. You'd be so impressed to see how much you can get done in 25 minutes. It's incredible. And by the way, as I'm talking about these things, I'll leave links in the description to some of the resources that I'm talking about, just to make it easier for you to navigate all this and sort of learn from all these different types of tools. Okay, and finally, I think one of the best points is practice positive self talk. I mean, when you wake up in the morning, go in the mirror and literally talk to yourself and tell yourself, I can do this. I do belong here. I was hired for a reason. I belong here. No one thinks that I'm terrible. I simply just have to continue doing the work that I'm doing. I mean, that's a great point. I think the whole thing about realizing that you were hired for a reason, that goes a long way. If the company thought that you were bad or you were going to make them lose money or be a detriment to whatever goals they were trying to achieve, you wouldn't be sitting in the chair that you're sitting right now. You wouldn't have the position that you have today. So tell yourself, I'm here for a reason. I studied, I practiced, I did whatever I had to do to get here, and I'm here. And that means a lot. So really practice that self-talk and that positive self-talk, and it will go a long way. I really do promise you. It's something that I try to do every single morning, and it's how I've been able to sort of develop this very positive and optimistic mindset and outlook on life, because I just always see opportunity in everything, and I try to do my best to make sure that I don't get in the weeds too much. But of course, I'm a human just like all of us out there, and it happens to me from time to time. Okay. The second biggest thing I have here is goal setting, okay? We're gonna be talking about short-term goals and long-term goals, right? The one thing you wanna do is you wanna shift from anxiety to action. Instead of thinking about, oh my God, what am I doing? Am I doing enough? Am I not doing enough? Just say, okay, if I feel this way, how can I sort of start digesting this anxiety, right? There's obviously things that I'm anxious about, right? If there's a project you're anxious about, maybe a demo you're anxious about, a meeting that you're anxious about, try to break down everything that would make you successful at that, right? And set small, achievable goals, okay? Focus on completing each of these single goals every time you go into work. And also just be very clear on these goals. You have to be extremely clear when you write these goals, because else it's going to be very hard for you to achieve them. You can't simply say, I want to be better at this. How do you want to be better at it? Why do you want to be better at it? Start thinking of, I need to complete ABC by Wednesday so that on Thursday I can do D, E, F, and then finally on Friday I can do X, Y, Z. Okay, this is how clear I want you to be. So here's an exercise for you if you're paying attention, okay? For short-term goals, I want you to, before the start of your work week, let's say on the Sunday evening, write just one simple goal that you're going to focus on for that week. And you might be asking yourself, what is one goal going to do for me? If I just do one thing, is that really going to be that helpful? Well, I think at this point, remember, you're anxious, you're sort of in the hole. At this point, it's not so much about achieving the goal. It's mostly getting in the habit of writing goals and just literally getting, a pencil or a pen and writing it out. I'm going to accomplish this by this week, and this is how I'm going to do it. That one thing. And guess what? At the end of the week on Friday, you look back at that task list and you ask yourself, did I complete the thing? And since you only did one thing, the barrier of achievement is very low. If you complete that one thing, you're going to feel amazing. And guess what? Maybe next week you say, okay, maybe I can do two things this week, or maybe I'll still stick to one, and that's okay. There's a book that I started reading recently that it's actually in my room. I can't show you now, but I'm sure you've heard of it. It's called Atomic Habits by James Clear. I only read the first chapter last night, but he talks about marginal improvements, okay? These 1% wins that you get every single week as you're working on these things, they will compound into something amazing in months and years' time. So don't worry so much about making these grand changes within your day-to-day. Just focus on these little tasks that we're going to be doing, right? So again, make one task, do it for the week, maybe the next week, 2 tasks, 3 tasks, 4 tasks, 5 tasks. Before you know it, you're accomplishing things left and right, and you're like, man, I didn't even remember, I used to remember when I didn't even accomplish anything, or I was so worried that I couldn't accomplish things, I couldn't focus. Now I'm just doing things left and right, okay? And as you're doing this, you want to measure your progress. So like I said, at the end of the week, you reassess your task list, and if you see that you accomplished more, that's great, right? If you accomplish less, ask yourself why. Was there a blocker? Was I feeling bad one day? Did I let my thoughts get the better of me? And always make sure that you're refining that list, okay? You really have to be careful and in fine-tuning what it is you're doing, else you're not going to get better, right? If you want something to get better, you have to measure it, and that's just how it is. And that's why we're starting simple with one task. and just focusing on that one thing. And similarly for your long-term goals, these are things that you can think of, 3, 6, 9, 12 months ahead of time. But what I really want you to think about is, how can I align these short-term goals to these long-term goals? These things should be aligned. You don't want to have one long-term goal that's completely different from your short-term goals, because at the end of the day, you want these things to align. If you have two varying task lists, it's going to be very hard for you to focus. So think of something you really want in the future, like, I want to get promoted. I want to get to the next level. I want to start being invited to these meetings. I want to go in front of my SVP to ask them so and so questions. How can I digest this and break it up into smaller problems and tasks that can get me there? And these deadlines, like long-term goals, these deadlines are going to be very good, and they're going to keep you in focus. Don't think of deadlines as this, end all be all, the world's going to end. Use it as a way to reshift your focus and stay on track. Deadlines are good. If we didn't have deadlines, there wouldn't really be a purpose to a lot of the things that we're doing. So make sure that you're tracking yourself, keeping these deadlines. And the best thing in any field, as you start breaking larger problems into smaller actionable items, it will help you anywhere in your career and in life. And people will notice that. People will notice, hey, this person's so good at planning and designing, and they can take this vague problem statement and just break it up into small tasks. And you can thank yourself for this step for getting there. So it's very important that you do short-term and long-term goal setting. Okay, the next one, which is something I talk about a lot, is becoming measured, okay? You want to seek constructive feedback regularly, and there's at least 3 different people you can do it from. The first one's your manager, right? This is the person you probably talk to maybe already once a week, or every other week, once a month. They're the person that ideally will vouch for you. I say ideally because personally I feel that there is a lack of leadership these days, and you want to make sure that you're finding the right role model, okay? So let's talk about your manager. If you're right now, let's say, doing a one-on-one once a month, which for some of us we are, maybe every other week, talk to your manager and say, hey, can we instead do one once a week? Odds are they're going to be completely fine with that. And if you're very intent on why it is that you're changing to that schedule, hey, I want to have one-on-ones once a week because I'm looking to grow. I'm a little bit anxious about this, and I would really like your help to see where I can reshift my focus. Can you help me with that? They're probably going to tell you, yeah. I mean, that's literally their job, right? To help their team be the best they can. So regularly ask them for feedback. And as you're approaching these one-on-ones, you can now take that short and long-term task list we just worked on from point 2, and you can show it to them and say, hey, these are the things I came up with. Do you think I'm on the right track here? Is this a good thing I should work on? Is this a bad thing I'm doing? Am I wasting time here? What do you think? So that's like the first person you can reach out to. The second person I would reach out to is maybe an executive, right? Go to their manager and ask them at a higher level, what are some of the business needs? And are these things aligned with business needs, right? Is this what customers want? Is this what the business needs? By me doing these things, am I adding value to the team? Am I adding value to the business? These are the types of questions they can help you answer at a much higher level. So you want to be looking across the board at different executives, maybe product managers, project managers, different types of senior directors, so on and so forth. The people that are really, really running the organization at a much higher level. These are going to be great sources of information for you. And then finally, and actually I think most importantly, your peers at your same level. Right? These are the people that day to day are in the trenches with you. They are there doing the work. They understand the pressure that you're going through, and they might be feeling just as anxious. So approach them and say, hey, I want to get better. I'm tired of feeling anxious. Hey, how about you and me? Let's get on this plan where we sort of hype each other up and get better. Let's be honest with each other. Let's give each other feedback, and be very honest in telling them that you want them to be honest. A lot of people are scared to give feedback. They're afraid that they're going to hurt someone's feelings, but this is not what you want to do, right? You want to get into this zone of, we're just trying to get better. And before you know it, now you're starting to work with your colleagues. You guys are super excited about what the work you're going to do. You're hyping each other up. Maybe other people join, and this can really improve team morale, right? So by measuring your successes here and giving each other feedback continuously, you're just now going to be getting so many sources of information from different people. You have your peers, your managers, executives. You really can't go wrong at this stage, okay? There's a couple other things here. I think we've already talked about them. Ask specific questions while you're getting feedback. This is a very important one here. There's actually 2 things. So, the phone almost fell there. Ask specific questions. When you approach your manager, for example, instead of ever asking them, like, do you think I'm doing okay? Maybe sometimes you can ask them, what else can I improve on? Because what can I improve on might show maybe they think you're already doing something great, but by asking that question, it sort of reframes the question in their mind and says, well, I hadn't really thought about that. This person's already doing something so well, but here's some other things that you can do to even be better. And I think by reframing the question that way, even though I said, talk to your manager and ask them, is this okay? Because that's also a valid point that you want to get to. Also ask them what you can improve on. And also, you want to be reframing this feedback as growth and not criticism. My notes, I feel like I've jumped a little too much, but anyway, back to the point. You want to reframe all these feedback points as growth. One of the big things that I regret in the beginning of my career was I was very sensitive. Okay. I felt like a lot of times when my manager would give me feedback, I really didn't like it. And I just kind of said, like, no, I know better. I felt like I knew better. I didn't really know what they were talking about. This is like first 6 months of my career. But in hindsight, and it actually, I got better over time just through maturity and getting older and having more experience. But if you take everything as an opportunity to grow, you can't go wrong. Even the worst advice, I mean, someone can say flat out, you're terrible at this. Okay. I'm going to give you a perfect example because this is quite literally what happened. I work in tech, and in tech, let's say well, obviously there's multiple things you can work on. In the beginning, when I joined, most engineers are given the opportunity to work on many things at once. But in my first 6 months, I was not the best. Okay. And my manager said, I need you to not work on that because you're not good in that area. I'm going to put you in this area, which for some people, they might think, well, that's good. They're looking out for you. They want you to succeed. But at that point, it took a huge hit to my ego. I felt like I was the only one on the team that got feedback like that, pretty much saying, like, I can't even assign you to these things because you're not successful. Now, everything's changed. I've gotten a lot better. And frankly, or fortunately, I am now able to work on many things at work once again. But I just want to show you, I've been there. And had I taken that insight as growth back then, I would have been able to more rapidly evolve. But just to say, all this criticism comes with a silver lining. Take everything as a growth opportunity and just know that getting criticism is the best thing that can happen in your career. Okay. And finally, here, no news is good news. If you start walking to work after getting all this feedback and you no longer have managers hounding you, executives asking you questions, maybe there's less things going wrong, you realize that you're starting to be a little more autonomous in your work, that's a good thing. That means that people are building trust in you. You're gaining that loyalty. This is actually one thing that's a huge benefit of staying at the same company for a long time. I've been at this company for 8 years. I have a lot of loyalty in this company, a lot of trust built in this company. People know that if something gets assigned to me, I will get it done with a certain level of quality that I expect and that I know the business will value. Okay. And finally, I think actually this is the most important point. It's very important. Diversify your joy, okay? Find meaning outside of work. I can't stress that enough. Find meaning outside of work. Life is full of so much to do. There's opportunity everywhere. Work is not the only thing you have to do. I understand that some people out there, especially people in their early 20s, really at any stage of your life, really want to devote a lot of time to work. That's 100% okay. But at least the position that I take is I want to do multiple things outside of work, right? Because I think it makes me a more well-rounded person. I enjoy going to the gym. I enjoy doing things in the stock market. I enjoy doing this. This is a very fun, creative outlet for me. And I hope that I can continue to grow it and help people that are watching it and in a similar career path as I am. So make sure you diversify your joy. Find those hobbies that make you look forward to honestly getting out of work, and not for a bad reason, just because you have something else that's fun to do. Maybe you like cooking, you like playing a sport. In this way, when you get to work and when you leave work, work is not the only thing you're thinking about. In this way, you always keep your mind busy so you're not just stressed out all the time thinking, oh, what if, what if, what if? Okay. Develop hobbies and social connections. Kind of goes with point one here. Celebrate your non-work wins. Let's say that you're really into cooking. I love cooking, right? Let's say you made a new recipe that you've never done before. Like, for the first time, I think like a month ago, I made baked ziti for the first time. And that was amazing. And I celebrated that moment. And it came out delicious. And I highly recommend that anyone that's into cooking makes a baked ziti. I'm just saying, celebrate these small moments, because at work, you're going to have high moments. And it's really cool to also have high moments outside of work. And again, this point, diversifying your joy, is all about keeping yourself busy and not so focused on your day-to-day work, okay? You don't want to fall into the work identity mind trap. You don't want to be the guy that when people ask, hey, what do you do? Oh, I go to work. And that's all you can talk about. You've been there, right? You've been in social settings, maybe with family, and all you can talk about is work. This is what I did at work today. This is what went well at work today. And then the conversation goes stale. Nothing to talk about, right? You don't want to be that person. Find things to do outside of work, and I promise you, your overall life is going to be better. Never mind the anxiety that we're talking about, okay? All right, well, those were all the 4 points, and now I want to conclude with a story of mine, okay? I went through all these moments myself. When I first started my career, after a year of being at my current company, there was a new engineer that joined the team, and they were what I would describe as a 10x engineer. And very rapidly, and within the first year, they were promoted. So I was at the company for 2 years. This person was there for 1 year. And as I was pushing for promotion, they got promoted faster than I did. I mean, they were better than me. They could communicate their ideas much better than I could. They were just very effective in the code base. And I'm sure for people that are in careers, they focus or they know people like this, right? And of course, we're going to focus on them. So what did I do? In the beginning, I took it to heart. I was devastated. My ego was hurt, right? I talked to my colleagues, this person's so much better. I was sort of complaining at this moment. But then I took a step back. I matured a little bit. I started focusing. What do I need to do? I need to be like this person. I need to clone this person. I need to mirror this person. I started studying them. I befriended them. I did what they did. You know, how do they communicate? I need to get like that. That's a good learning thing. How do they write code? I started doing this. Started setting these short-term and long-term goals for myself, right? Based on the things that I knew that they did. I started measuring this success, talking to my managers, talking to my peers. I did a lot of talking with my peers during this time, right? And finally, the fourth one, I mean, I always had hobbies outside of work, but because of my hobbies and everything else I had done during this time, I finally got out of that rut. And it took a couple of months. It wasn't an overnight thing. It took a couple of months. And then I finally got to a point where it was the best working scenario I had. Unfortunately, this person doesn't work at the company anymore, but I felt like him and I were the strongest developers on that team. And anything that needed to be done, if our hands were on it, it was going to be done with amazing quality. So just to show that you can be in the rut, you can be in the hole of anxiety, and you can get out being victorious and prosperous and just having a very bright future ahead. So anyway, with all that being said, I'm very happy I was able to make this video. I'm super happy that I got this new light that hopefully improves the quality of the video. And I have a lot more ideas. I'm constantly writing in my notes every single day of things I want to keep talking about. If there's anything that you would all like for me to talk about, let me know in the comments. If you like this type of content, if you're in a 9-to-5 career like myself and you love it, or maybe you hate it, or you're struggling with some sort of work issues or anything related to career and career growth, please let me know. I'd love to engage with you. And with all that being said, I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I will see you all later. Take it easy.